Hey, welcome back to another video. This video is going to be on the new missing feature of Laravel's route model binding. This is something interesting I wanted to talk about despite it being a pretty small feature, because I've been in this situation many times before where this would have been really useful to have, but I didn't have it. So I wanted to show how this works. This is basically, it's just you could chain missing off of the route here and basically instruct the route on what to do if the route model binding doesn't actually find the record. So let's go into a very simple link shortening application I built to demo this and actually go through how this works. So I've created a link model, and a link can have, or it belongs to a user. So that means user has many links. And now I've created this inside this migration here. So the links table has an ID, foreign ID, a slug, which is basically what the route is identified by, so you can figure out which target to redirect to, and then the target. So this will make more sense as we go through the application and actually build this. I've also created a link factory. So in here it just sets the user ID, a slug, which is just a fake word, and then a target, which is my blog, and that's where it should redirect to, assuming the redirect is correct. So where that factory is actually used is in the database seeder here. Creates a user that has 10 links, and then just creates those records, which creates 11 records. And that's what that looks like. So this is the 10 links, and that all are owned by the user ID. To get started, we have our routes file. We direct a link into the redirect method of the link controller. In here, I'm just returning link for now because I wanted to show how things were done when I started building Laravel applications. So how this would work is you'd basically, whatever you'd pass in, you'd use that to query the database. In this case, I'm passing in an ID of 1. I know that in the database we have SED as a slug. Let's try just David so it's easier to remember. So if I pass in David, we should get David back, which means that it is passing through the route correctly into the controller. Now what if we want to actually query here? So what we used to do is just return link. We want to make sure that's actually imported. Find or fail, and then link, which would in this case be the slug. And so if we refresh now, we can see 404 is not found because we're not actually querying the slug, we're actually querying by ID. So where slug first or fail. I want to make sure that this is spelled correctly. And it gets our actual record. So it's searching by slug, which is David, and then it gets the record. And so I could now grab this target and redirect to it. But what if I wanted to redirect somewhere specifically if this record was not found? So right now it would actually fail just with a typical 404. Let's try David S. So that's the typical 404 page. What if I wanted to display something different? So I could just do first, and that means that our link could actually be not a link, it could be null. We can set this to redirect link, and then we could check with an if. So if not redirect link, we want to just return oops 404. Otherwise we want to return redirect link. So oops 404, that doesn't exist, but if we try one that does exist, we get the record back. Now, of course, we'd want to return a redirect to the target, but for now, I'd like to just demo it this way. Now, what we do now with route model binding is actually just make sure that we set the type here, and you want to make sure that's also imported, which it is in our case. And then we just return link to get the link. Now, you'd think this work, but it won't. It'll actually throw a 404. Because what's happening is it's actually trying to route model bind based on the link's ID column. So what we need to do is actually specify the slug column in here, which is also a relatively new thing in Laravel, I think. And when we do that, it's now searching by the slug column, and we get the correct record based on what we pass in. Now this is great, but what happens if we want to specify where to actually route a 404, like a record not found situation, right? Like in this case, it routes to the default 404 page, but what if we want to change it based on just the links not being found? So this is what's new. We could actually just do missing, and in here pass a callback. The example on the documentation has request passed in, And in here, honestly, in my case, I just want to return a plain text response. So that's return response, oops, 404 with a 404 status. And we need to actually set the header here because it's plain text. And so now let's see if this actually works. So refresh and we get oops 404. So that's what missing is. It just allows us to basically redirect to wherever we want in the case that a record is not found. Because of course, by the time we get here, this is already binded, so to speak. We have no control over what happens in our controller if this link is not actually found. So we could actually finish this up just for the sake of this tutorial by creating a redirect to link target. And now this is a 404, but if I go to one that exists, it should redirect right to my blog. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. I also want to say thank you for 850 subscribers. Things have grown faster than I expected them to, and I'm going to keep making videos as long as you're enjoying them and finding them useful. So thank you again, and I will see you in the next video.